Years of relentless digging had turned Dr. Yosef Garfinkel into a legendary figure in archaeology. Yet, the discovery that would define his career also weighed heavily on him. Beneath a quiet ridge, where the Bible tells of giants falling, he stumbled upon something that didn't match the story everyone thought they knew. For years, he held part of it secret, until time left him no choice. Before it was too late, he was determined to let the hidden truth of the Valley of Elah finally be revealed. How Yosef Garfinkel discovered the lost city hidden in Israel's hills. Yosef Garfinkel's story didn't start with fame or incredible discoveries. It began as a young boy wandering the fields of Israel, surrounded by stones carrying thousands of years of history. Most kids would have passed by them without a second thought, but he didn't. Those hills captured his imagination early on, and they never let go. As he grew up, he chose to stay close to those ancient ridges, turning his childhood curiosity into a lifelong career. He became a field archaeologist. Later, he joined the Hebrew University of Jerusalem as a professor. Yet, no matter how far his work took him, one thing always drew him back: the Iron Age, when small farming villages grew into organized cities with walls, streets, and order. What fascinated him were the real places people built. Towns that once stood tall but had since been swallowed by earth and time. And then, one day, he found one of those places on a quiet ridge above the Valley of Elah. The Valley of Elah is a wide, open farmland dotted with olive trees and scrub. Peaceful today, its name carries history. It's said to be where David fought Goliath. But Garfinkel wasn't there for the legends. He was there because the land itself was impressive. From the ridge, you could see for miles in every direction. To the west, the coastal plain stretches out, while to the east, the highlands rise toward Jerusalem. The site had a modern name, Khirbet Qeiyafa. When Garfinkel and his co-director, Sagana from the Israel Antiquities Authority, first walked the area in the late 2000s, they noticed something that made them stop. Beneath the weeds, faint lines of old stone walls traced the shape of the hill. Some sections were thick, too substantial for a farmer to have built for fun. There was a flat area that looked like a gate and a circular wall outline surrounding the hill. A wall meant someone had a plan. A gate meant someone had authority. Together, they hinted at a story buried there, waiting to be uncovered. In the summer of 2007, the digging began. The team set up camp, divided the hill into square grids, and started removing the layers of soil. They scraped, brushed, measured, and recorded one trowel stroke at a time. By the end of the first season, their patience paid off. Beneath the date, they uncovered a heavy city wall, a well-preserved gate, and rows of houses built right against the wall. This was in a random village that grew over time. It was a carefully planned city. Over the following years, the town's layout became clearer. Khirbet Qeiyafa wasn't enormous, but it wasn't tiny either. It covered around 2.3 hectares, roughly 5.5 acres, enclosed by a sturdy wall stretching about 2,300 feet around the hill. That wall was special. It wasn't just a pile of stones. It was a casemate wall made of two parallel stone lines with small rooms in between. These rooms added strength and could be used for storage, or even living space. You don't build something like this by accident. It takes manpower, skill, and a reason to defend it. Some of the wall stones weighed several tons. Moving them required careful planning, teamwork, and raw strength. Inside the walls, the team discovered houses opening onto narrow streets that curved around the city. The layout was clean and deliberate. Each home fit snugly into the wall's curve, forming an inner ring of life. This design appeared in other ancient towns, showing that whoever built Qeiyafa was following a plan, not improvising. Then they uncovered the gate, and that's when things got truly exciting. It wasn't a small doorway or a simple gap. It was a 4-chambered city gate, about 35 feet wide and 42 feet deep. The passage was long enough to control who entered and exited, almost like a checkpoint. You could picture guards resting in the shade, travelers waiting to enter, and merchants unloading goods. Soon after, the team found something even more surprising. A second gate on the opposite side of the city, built exactly the same way. 2 massive gates in a town this size were unheard of in the region. Gates were expensive and difficult to build. Most cities had only one. The discovery earned Qeiyafa a nickname that would stick, the City of Two Gates. As the excavation season continued, the picture became clearer. By the 5th season, About one-fifth of the city had been uncovered. That included roughly 650 feet of wall, both gates, a long building with stone pillars believed to be a stable, and around 10 houses. For a city buried for 3,000 years, it was a remarkable comeback. Open spaces near each gate formed plazas where people once gathered. Everything was orderly, defendable, and planned. In these plazas, the team found traces of daily life, grinding stones for crushing grain into flour, large jars for olive oil or wheat, and cooking pots blackened by fire. Then came one of the most talked about finds, a broken pottery piece covered in ink, known as an ostracon, found near one of the gates. The faded text showed that whoever wrote it could form real words. Long inscriptions from this period are rare, and discovering one at Qeiyafa revealed that the city wasn't just a military post. It was a place where people could read and write. In later excavation seasons, the site took real shape. The team mapped every wall and doorway, tracing how each house connected to the streets and how the gates anchored the city. Using drones, surveying tools, and thousands of photos, they recorded every detail down to the smallest layer of soil. When all the data came together, it revealed something remarkable. The city seemed to have been built all at once, not gradually. It looked like a place designed and constructed in a single effort, possibly to control this part of the valley. That made it unique among early Iron Age sites. By 2013, after 7 full excavation seasons, the team had documented every inch of the site. But the true meaning behind these discoveries was only beginning to emerge. Decoding the life and beliefs of Qeiyafa. The lines on the ostracon found at Khirbet Qeiyafa were arranged in 5 neat rows, each separated by a faint painted line. The letters looked angular, the kind scholars call an early alphabetic style, often nicknamed Proto-Canaanite. That simply means it belongs to the family of alphabets that would later develop into Hebrew and other West Semitic scripts. Naturally, the big question is, what does the writing actually say? The truth is, experts don't all agree. The letters are real, but reading them is tricky. Some strokes are broken or faint, and several signs can be interpreted in more than one way. Over the years, different specialists offered careful interpretations. One well-known reading comes from Israeli scholar Gershon Gallo. He identified words that sounded like a call for justice, terms such as judge, widow, and orphan. It's a moving interpretation, but it remains just one proposal, built on partial letters and educated guesses where the pottery is worn. Another respected scholar, Emil Push, read the same inscription differently. He recognized some of the same letters but arranged them into other words, interpreting the writing as concerning authority, protection, and perhaps even the appointment of king. When 2 skilled experts can look at the same few lines and reach different conclusions, it shows how incomplete the evidence is. This wasn't the only example of writing at Qeiyafa. Years later, another inscription appeared, a large clay storage jar stamped with the name Ishbaal, son of Beta. The name sounds dramatic because an Ishbaal appears in the Bible, but the dig team emphasized this was just another man with the same name, not the biblical figure. In the early 10th century BCE, Ishbaal was a common name, and the Baal component didn't automatically point to a particular god or religious belief. The significance of the jar isn't who the person was, it's that the name was written down. Names on jars were part of record keeping. They show that people tracked ownership, supplies, and what belonged to whom. This is how communities managed food, oil, and grain. If a jar large enough to hold dozens of gallons of produce carried someone's name, it meant someone at Qeiyafa could write well enough to label it. This proved that Khirbet Qeiyafa was a literate, functioning town. Dating the city was just as important as reading its writing, and the team approached it carefully. Instead of relying only on pottery styles, they used radiocarbon dating on burned olive pits from the city's destruction layer. These small seeds were short-lived samples. They record only the year the fruit grew, avoiding confusion from older wood that might have burned later. To ensure accuracy, Garfinkel and his team divided some seeds and sent halves to 2 separate labs, the Accelerator Unit at Oxford University and the 14 Chrono Lab at Queen's University Belfast. That way, both labs tested the same material, and any differences could be checked independently. The results were clear. Both labs clustered the dates around the late 11th to early 10th century BCE, about 3,000 years ago. To refine this further, the team applied Bayesian modeling. The terms sound complex, but the idea is simple. Each carbon date has a margin of error of a few decades. By combining all the dates with what archaeologists already knew about which layers came first, the model tightened the overall timeline. In everyday terms, it's like averaging everyone's opinion, but giving more weight to the ones that match the physical evidence. Applied to Qeiyafa, this method confirmed the city's construction in the early 10th century BCE. This dating also revealed something unusual about the site. Unlike many ancient tells, which have layers of rebuilding over centuries, Qeiyafa is mostly a one-period city. It sits directly on bedrock and shows only one major phase of construction and occupation before being abandoned. That made the site easy to read. In the second round of dating, the team didn't stop at a few samples. They ran 17 measurements on 11 different seeds, splitting 4 of them again so each lab could check the same material. The final averages, once calibrated to calendar years, consistently pointed to roughly 1020 to 980 BCE. With the writing and dating established, the next question remained: what did the people of Qeiyafa believe in? The answer came from the buildings themselves. Archaeologists uncovered 3 special rooms that stood out from ordinary structures. These weren't large temples, but small, focused spaces built for rituals. Inside, they found objects marking sacred use: upright standing stones, low stone altars, and carved architectural models resembling miniature buildings. These rooms were places for offerings or prayers. One particularly striking find was a carved stone shaped like a tiny shrine, about 8 inches high, 10 inches wide, and just under 14 inches long. On its face, a doorway is framed by raised borders with horizontal bar patterns. Made from fine, hard limestone, it required skill and time to carve. Garfinkel and researcher Madeline Mumquogu suggested that its design mirrored features used in important public or royal architecture of the same era. Another sacred room contained a heavy basalt altar. Basalt, a dark, dense volcanic rock, isn't easy to shape by hand. The flat top was ideal for pouring liquids or burning offerings. Nearby were smaller ritual items: a 2-cup vessel for libations, a small seal, and an Egyptian scarab. Scarabs often served as amulets or symbols of rebirth, common in ritual contexts across the region. Together, these finds show that Qeiyafa's people followed worship patterns connected to neighboring cultures while keeping their own distinct style. One detail stood out immediately. None of the ritual rooms contained small clay figurines of gods or goddesses, which often appear at other Iron Age sites. This doesn't fully reveal their beliefs, but it shows something about their practices. The objects left behind, standing stones, altars, architectural models, suggested a focus on sacred spaces and symbols rather than carved human or animal shapes. With writing, dating, and rituals established, one final question remained: why was Qeiyafa built here? The strategic secret behind the city's location. From the top of the ridge, it becomes clear why Khirbet Qeiyafa was so important. Its hill overlooks the entire Valley of Elah, the main passage between plains and the highlands. In ancient times, this meant control. To the west lay Philistia, the land of the Philistines. To the east, the highlands of Judah. Between them ran a natural highway, a path used for centuries by armies, traders, and travelers. Whoever controlled this northern ridge could monitor all movement in both directions. It wasn't just a scenic viewpoint. It was a choke point, a strategic watchpost between two worlds. That seems to be exactly why Qeiyafa was built, and it's how Yosef Garfinkel explains its purpose. From the summit, the landscape stretches in every direction. To the west, barely over a mile away, stands the ancient mound of Azekah. To the southeast, only about a mile and a half, is Soko. Both are clearly visible, close enough to walk between in under an hour. A little farther west, around 7.5 miles away, is Tel Es-Sofi, the ancient city of Gath, one of the great Philistine strongholds. In the early Iron Age, Gath dominated the lowlands. If a fortified town like Qeiyafa was positioned at the edge of the Elah Valley, it wasn't for the view, it was for strategy. This valley carried traffic from Gath Strait toward the highlands, and a watch point here could monitor movement and send warnings eastward. Everything about Qeiyafa's design matches its valley guard role. Its most distinctive feature is its two massive gates. The western gate faces Azekah and the lowlands, the route toward the Philistine plain. The southern gate opens onto the Elah Valley floor, the path climbing eastward. Because the city had two gates, excavators suggested linking it to the biblical town of Shoreim. a Hebrew word that literally means two gates. Garfinkel emphasizes, however, that this is a hypothesis, not a confirmed fact. Not everyone agrees, and that's fine. What truly matters is that the twin-gate design reveals how the city operated. To understand its function, imagine the Shephelah, the rolling low hills between the coastal plain and the highlands, as a series of natural passes. Each pass offers a route between the two regions, and the Elah Valley is one of the most crucial. Qeiyafa lies about 18.5 miles southwest of Jerusalem in a straight line, roughly a full day's walk in ancient times. Close enough for a signal to reach the capital quickly, yet far enough to serve as Judah's first line of defense. If you were responsible for protecting the highlands from sudden western attacks, this is exactly where you would place an early warning post. The city's layout reinforces this interpretation. Across Judah in the early Iron Age, many towns followed a similar blueprint, a double wall with narrow rooms built between the stone lines. Houses were attached directly to the walls, forming a continuous belt that strengthened the defenses. An inner road ran along the inside of the city, letting guards or messengers move swiftly between gates without cutting through crowded alleys. Towns such as Beth Shemesh and Tel E and Nazbeth, both within a day's walk of Jerusalem, used the same system. Garfinkel's team compared Qeiyafa with other contemporary sites in the Shephelah and found remarkable similarities. One striking example is Level 5 at Lachish, a fortified town built in the 10th century BCE. There, too, houses hug the inside of the city wall. The resemblance to Qeiyafa is unmistakable. This frontier role becomes even more obvious when looking west toward Gath. At its peak, Gath covered over 70 acres, making it one of the region's largest cities. From Qeiyafa's ridge, Gath is less than 8 miles away in a straight line. A major lowland power so close to Judah's border explains why the highlands would respond by planting fortified towns like Qeiyafa across the valleys. Each town could host a small garrison, store supplies, and send signals. When the excavations at Khirbet Qeiyafa finally concluded, another phase of work began, analyzing and interpreting everything that had been uncovered. The untold story after the excavation ended. Turning thousands of stones and layers of soil into a permanent, verifiable record took years of careful work. Yosef Garfinkel and his team were determined that the story of this small city would survive long after the trenches were filled. That meant meticulous cataloging, detailed expert studies, and large printed volumes that documented every single detail in black and white. The reports were released as a structured series. The first major volume set the stage for everything that followed. It explained how the excavations were organized, how the trenches were numbered, and how each type of find, pottery, bones, metals, or tools, would be recorded. Specialists from the Hebrew University and the Israel Antiquities Authority contributed sections, creating a unified method for all subsequent seasons. This initial book became the blueprint for telling Qeiyafa's story. Later volumes expanded the record even further. One major installment, edited by Garfinkel with Sagana and Michael Hazel, compiled a main layout of the site, the walls, gates, and building plans across 4 excavation areas. It documented soil layers, individual rooms, and the points where one phase of construction gave way to another. Another volume focused entirely on art, ritual objects, and inscriptions found at Qeiyafa. Rather than scattering these delicate finds across unrelated journals, the team grouped them, photographed them carefully, and published them at a consistent scale. Altars, amulets, seals, and carved models appeared side by side, each described in the same format. This created a reliable reference for anyone comparing symbols or styles across the region. Pottery, the backbone of archaeological dating, was treated with the same precision. Working with Hugu Kang, Garfinkel created a typology of Iron Age ceramics from the site, showing rim shapes, handles, surface textures, and the uses of each vessel. These detailed drawings and measurements allow other excavations in Israel to align their layers chronologically. When a pot from another site matches a Qeiyafa form, it anchors that layer to the same period. The most delicate object, the ink pottery sherd, the ostracon, underwent years of imaging and analysis. The Israel Antiquities Authority first photographed it in color, black and white, and infrared to capture faint traces of writing. Later, it was examined under 12 different light bands using multispectral imaging. Each wavelength revealed subtle details, helping experts distinguish genuine ink strokes from cracks or stains. Metal objects were studied just as rigorously. A separate catalog recorded every item, tools, fittings, pins, and blades, along with the exact room or floor where it was found. This data was then matched to architectural plans so researchers could trace patterns, which alloys appeared in homes, near storage spaces, or close to gates. Some of Qeiyafa's treasures were displayed publicly. The inked ostracon took its place in the Iron Age Gallery at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, allowing visitors to see its faint lines up close. A carved stone model of a building facade, the miniature shrine found near one of the gates, has been part of international exhibitions, showcasing the artistic skill behind the city's construction. The site itself received formal protection soon after excavations ended. In 2014, Israel's Parks Authority and the government declared the hill and the surrounding Valley of Elah National Park, halting plans for nearby residential projects. With park status came ongoing maintenance, paths marked, weeds cleared, and erosion controlled, ensuring that heavy winter rains would not damage the exposed walls. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.